Kia ora everyone, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of Love Off Script. I'm your host, Stephanie Love. And on today's episode, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about how attachment that forms in childhood can manifest for you as an adult. And I'm going to use examples from my own life to share a little bit about how that can come about. So I'm 38 years old now, and I've had an HR career for the last 14 years. I went to university, I studied, I went traveling, and then I came and worked in HR for a few years. And as part of that, I managed to climb up the corporate ladder to leadership level, managed to earn over six figures, 150K when I was still in my late 20s, and I was able to travel for work, picking up secondments, additional responsibilities. So, in a masculine world, in a corporate environment, you might think, oh, that's actually great. Like, that's what everybody wants. They want to grow, they want to climb up the corporate ladder, they want to achieve. But where it was coming from me, was actually from a wounded place because what I was desiring was external validation. I was people pleasing. I was being as flexible as I possibly could. I was putting everybody else's needs before my own, and that left me burnt out. It left me with very little for myself at the end of the day. And so, while it was a good thing because I managed to achieve a lot in my career, it actually came from a place of wounding. So I'm at a point now in my career where I've slowed down a lot. I'm not interested in climbing the corporate ladder anymore. My main focus with work is to get a paycheck, although I'm still investing a lot of time and energy into the work that I do. But it's not coming from a place of external validation anymore. It's not coming from a place of I want to achieve or I want to meet other people's expectations or I want other people to validate my experience. It doesn't come from that place anymore. But that's one of the main ways that my wounding around people pleasing, around keeping the peace, around wanting to make everybody around me happy, is from my childhood. And it comes from a fear of abandonment and a fear of rejection. So by me trying to do everything for everybody else, I've actually abandoned and rejected myself in the process. So that's one way that those kind of attachment styles and those attachment wounds formed in childhood can actually manifest for us as adults. I've also been bridesmaid 7 times, which has been awesome. I've loved being able to support my friends. It's been an absolute honor to be bridesmaid for my friends. It does come with a lot of responsibility, but I also took charge on that. I was the one organizing a lot of the things, along with the other bridesmaids, and put a lot of money and energy and effort into it. So I was the reliable friend. I was the one who took charge of everything, and I really made sure that the day was amazing for my friends because they deserve that. They deserve to have the most wedding day, a most amazing wedding day. But again, it might have been coming from an unhealed place or an unaligned place where I was making sure that they had the experience that I was desiring as well. And that I was wanting to make sure that go out of my way to make sure that everything was good for them and they were having an amazing experience. But that's just another example of kind of how that wounding or that attachment, in society might seem like a good thing. It wasn't coming from a place of alignment, because I, again, was putting myself last and I was putting other people before me. Um, and a lot of this is just to avoid my greatest fear, which is fear of abandonment. And it's not just mine that I'm carrying from my own experiences, it's actually generational. I'm working with a somatic trauma therapist at the moment, and one of the things she said to me was that those things that you're experiencing and the feelings that you have, it's not just yours, it's carried down from generation to generation. And there might have been things in my past, I know there are things in my lineage that have happened around abandonment. And it might have even been, go back further years to my grandmother's age or my grandparents' kind of level. And so what that means is that when you are releasing it and when you are going into that pain and into that experience and you are experiencing it in your life, it can feel so much bigger and so much heavier than if it was just that isolated experience. And that's when this work is really powerful, because you can actually break the chain and you can heal for the generations that didn't have the same access to the tools that you have now. Like, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have ChatGPT to use as a therapist. Like, we have so much access to these free tools. We've got coaches, we've got circles. Mental health is a conversation that everybody is so much more open about talking about, and especially talking about our feelings and the way that we feel. Previous generations might not have had access to the same like information or level of education or coaches or practitioners or tools or information that we have today. So it's actually quite nice that we can start to understand why it stops with us and why we are the ones breaking the chain, and we're not pushing it onto the people around us and our children as well. Um, Another big area where attachment can really make a big difference, and it has in my life, is when it comes to romantic relationships. So I've been lucky. I had a long-term relationship in my late 20s, early 30s for 3.5 years. But there were things in that would trigger me, and it would trigger my fear of abandonment and my rejection wounds. And one of the biggest ones was when my ex-boyfriend, he used to leave a place, like we'd be out somewhere, like when we were traveling, for example, and I would be at a bar with our friends, and then suddenly I'd look around and he wasn't there. And without any kind of level of conversation or communication, and this is not to shame him or say he did this wrong or what have you, but the idea around there is that it was triggering me because he wasn't there, and I felt abandoned and I felt unsafe. And this is something that we ended up fighting over a lot. And we ended up having huge bust ups when we were traveling. It was so embarrassing. We had these big public fights in front of other people, and it left us both feeling super shit, because he would shut down and I would feel neglected, and it was just this really unhealthy dynamic. But at the time, because I hadn't started on my own healing journey, I didn't realize that that was what was happening, that I was being triggered by those experiences. But if I could go back into that relationship, I could see it now from a totally different perspective. And I would understand and I would know that there's my wounding talking. And it's okay for me to say or ask, please don't leave somewhere without me, because this is what happens. This is the feeling that I get when that happens. And I think, and if I could go back knowing the information that I know now, hindsight's always 2020, I would actually go back and ask that he respect that and understand that, and that it's not me coming at him or attacking him. It's me going, hey, this is something that I've struggled with in my life, and when this happens, this is the way that it makes me feel. Because I don't think he understood. I definitely didn't understand that that's what the dynamic was happening, but it was making both of us miserable. Yeah, there were some few nights which, when I was traveling, that I wish I could go back and change, but life is for learning, isn't it? And every experience we have shapes us. But I remember thinking, this is the way I was behaving. I didn't like it. I didn't like the person that I had become. I I always remember feeling so awful. We were, in an awesome place, traveling with our friends, and we were both feeling like shit. And that's not a healthy way to be, and that's not the way you want to be as well. But it also meant in my early 20s, I attracted emotionally unavailable men. I attracted trauma bonded relationships, but I didn't understand that back then. And so in my late teens, early 20s, I was in a relationship, a very brief relationship with somebody who abused me, and instead of me breaking away, which I eventually did, I stayed and I didn't understand why. And then following on from that, I had a few relationships which were very off and on over a number of years. And so I couldn't quite get it right with the relationship thing, and I couldn't understand why, because I relied on my feelings and how I felt about that person, and I wasn't necessarily looking at the way that they were treating me and asking myself, is that actually this is actually the way that I deserve to be treated? Is that the kind of relationship that I want where it's completely one-sided? Honestly, it's when you're in those trauma bonded relationships, some of you might relate to this in your younger days, it can feel so intoxicating, it can feel so overwhelming, it can feel like emotional highs and emotional lows, and you feel like they're the most amazing person you've ever met in your life. They're your soulmate. You can't live without them. And I've actually come to learn that a lot of the love songs out there, which are kind of about yearning and melancholy, they're not necessarily about love. They're about trauma bonding because true love is not meant to feel that way. And if you want to know more about this, I talked about it on the first episode of Love Off Script, where I was talking about the difference between true love and trauma bonding. But in my 20s, especially when I was going through my Saturn return, which was my late 20s, I really struggled with this relationship thing, and it was especially difficult because the people around me were settling down as well. And I was like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, I remember when I met my ex-boyfriend and I didn't hear from him for a few days. And I remember driving with my best friend in the car and I just burst into tears and I just said to her, what's wrong with me? Why can't I find a boyfriend? And I think part of that was because I was carrying so much unhealed energy within myself. I was behaving and acting from a place of wounding, from my childhood, from my ancestral trauma, generational trauma, past life trauma even. And so where I was coming from wasn't a healthy place, and so that's why I was attracting these relationships. But I also met someone who I did stick around for me, who I didn't feel abandoned by apart from those brief moments. And that was quite healing for me as well, because up to that point I thought I was broken and I thought there was something wrong with me. And I was in my early 20s, and so I didn't understand, I didn't have the tools, and I hadn't gone into the deep healing yet to understand that this is the reason why I was attracting these relationships. This is the reason why the chemistry felt so strong and so intense, and why they felt like to me, like they were the most amazing person ever. They were my soulmate. Like I was so infatuated. Like I remember one of my friends saying to me, if he proposed to you, you would say yes immediately. But when you take a step back and actually look at the dynamic of the relationship, it's not the kind of relationship that I wanted. I didn't want someone that I had to chase or that I was getting crumbs from. I wanted someone who would be secure, who would be there, I wouldn't have to think twice about the way that they feel about me or doubt the way that they felt about me. Um, but it can be when you're younger and you are running attachment wounds, you do attract a certain type of person into your life. And one way to look at it is that, oh my God, like I can't believe that I've had this experience again. It's so painful. What's wrong with me? But the other way of looking at it is, what information is this? What can I get out of this that I didn't actually realize I was carrying, or the pattern that I was still um, living out. And so taking some time to actually reflect and go, okay, so this is what happened. I felt abandoned by them. How am I abandoning myself? And now that I have the knowledge, and I talk about embodiment in the last episode, but I can go back and think, okay, so they were reflecting back to me my feelings of abandonment because I've abandoned myself. Or there's a part of me that feels abandoned. What part of me is that? And where can I actually start to go into and work through somatically to release that? But relationships is such a big one because I genuinely feel like we all deserve to be in healthy and safe partnership, and that is our place of thriving. There's so much statistics around this as well. Humans are a connected social species, and I don't think we're meant to be doing it alone. And so when you feel like you haven't attracted that relationship that you want and you do feel like there's something that's wrong with you or that you're broken, it can be incredibly painful, especially when you watch people around you fall in love, start their families, start to build their life together. But again, it's information. So, okay, I've energetically attracted this person into my life. So, what is it that I need to work on, or what is it reflecting back to me where I have potential to look at that I can help heal that so that I don't attract that energy into my life again. And the somatic therapist that I've worked with or I'm working with, that's one of the things that she said to me as well is we're working on not attracting that energy anymore. We don't want that push pull, uncertain, intermittent reinforcement, uh, not safe, not secure energy being into our life, pulling into our lives again. So that's one, healing those attachment wounds and looking at where it is in the body that those attachment wounds are stored, or those attachment injuries, rewriting those experiences through repatterning can help us actually attract the energy that we do want to bring into our life. So another point I just touched on there was around hyper independence and feeling like I can do everything on my own. And I operated this way for many years. I was independent from a very young age. I was one of the first one of my friends to get my driver's license. I was fortunate enough to be given a car by my parents, which I was supposed to pay back, which I don't think I ever did. But I was very lucky that I had wheels so that I could be independent because in New Zealand, if you don't have a car, it can be very isolating and it's very difficult to get around, particularly where I lived, which was out on a peninsula. And but what happened is that I became as a reaction or in a defense mechanism, or what's the right word? It was a response to what had happened to me in my life with my childhood. And I became like, I can be the one to look after myself. I can take care of myself. I don't need anybody. And this was all subconscious, don't get me wrong, because I love people. I love being around people. I adore my friends. I absolutely love my family and I love being around people. But subconsciously, there was a part of me that didn't trust. And it was like, oh, I don't need anyone. I can do this all on my own. Watch me. I'm going to go get my license. I'm going to finish school. I'm going to go get a job, work full time. I'm going to go to university. I'm going to go travel. I've done a lot of solo travel in my life. And if I wanted to do something, I just went and did it. But it also meant that I was doing a lot of stuff on my own as well. I was responsible for my flat. I was always the lead tenant on my flat, organizing my other flatmates. It got to a point where once my flatmate, I told him we've given up the lease, you gotta leave. And he didn't even move his stuff out, and I went and rented a trailer and put all his stuff in my car and then drove off. Took his stuff to his new house. And so I took on responsibility for everybody else, including myself. Um, I felt like it was my responsibility. I felt like other people's happiness was my responsibility. And I just took charge. I took the lead. I organized everything. I was always ahead of my admin. I was always checking in at work. Does anyone need any help? And I would work long hours. I would sacrifice so much of myself. And even to the point where I stopped being creative out of survival. So in my late teens, when I finished high school, I went and worked full time before I went to university and I stopped being creative. I used to love creating. I used to love sewing. I would make my own clothes. When I was at university and when I was at school, I made my own clothes. I made my own ball dresses. I remember making shoes. I remember when I was a kid, like cutting out little magazine like cutouts, and then I used to glue them and stick them together in a book and with little cardboard things as well. And I used to be so proud of my creations. And I love music. I love music. I love to sing. But I stopped singing. I stopped music. There's actually a video on my Instagram there's a reel on my Instagram about when at the time I won an electric guitar 17 years ago when I first started university, because I loved music, and I really wanted to learn how to play guitar. I wanted to play, and I wanted to sing. And I love to sing. I love karaoke. But I stopped doing all of that when I went into survival. But I didn't, this was all subconscious. I didn't realize that. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, cool, I don't have to be in survival all the time. I don't have to try and overachieve. I don't have to put everybody else before me. I can be selfish. Like, I'm in my late 30s, I don't have children, I don't have a partner. This is the time for me where I can really put myself first. And that is like something to be totally grateful for. And so now I've started back exploring my creative side. I started painting about 5 years ago during COVID time, which I loved. I started sewing again, making my own clothes. I've picked up the guitar again and started to relearn how to play. I started singing. I was at my dad and stepmom's house the other day, and they've got a karaoke machine, and I probably sang about 20 songs. Their poor ears were bleeding. But I was like, I was being happy. I was enjoying myself. And I was being like exploring the creative side of me that I think I just shelved because I was so concerned with everybody else's feelings and creating happiness around everybody around me. But that was also leading to me to feel burnt out as well because I was taking on so much responsibility. I felt like it all rested on my shoulders, even at work, even with my friends, I was putting everybody else before myself. And so I was crumbling on the inside, especially being a manifester where I need a lot of rest. I have creative urges and then I need rest. And then I have creative urges again. Something will come to me and I want to put it out and then I need to rest again. But I was like, go, 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 go all the time and didn't actually stop. And feel safe to receive and feel safe to just create without an outcome, without thinking of it as non-productive time. I've just finished reading Big Magic by Liz Gilbert, and I went to see her in February, which was amazing to hear her speak because one of the things she talks about is uh, don't put so much pressure on creativity to be success, to be your ticket to freedom, to be your big break. Um, Create without expectations. You know, it might not go anywhere. It might not, there's like it might just sit there. It might, something you might make and it might just sit on your shelf, you know, but do it for the joy of it, for the joy of actually doing it in the moment. And that's what I'm really putting in mind when I'm thinking about the things I want to do creatively. I'm also learning another language right now. I'm learning Spanish, which has been good for my brain as well. But the reason I talk about this and the hyper independence and why attachment runs so much of our life is because we're not meant to do it all alone. We're not meant to be by ourselves. We are meant to open up and allow other people in and be in community. And I really struggle with that in Western society because we're very individualistic and we're going more and more in that direction, particularly when it comes to social media. So we're actually losing that community. We're losing that sense of connection, of knowing who your neighbors are, of knowing, spending time in person with the people around you. And I really notice this when I travel as well, is that I love that people are just outside together. You know, they're sharing meals together. They're just being. They're not having to focus on work or focus on achieving or focusing on outcomes or having to do things or climb the ladder or make more money. They're just focused on being and being in the moment. And I felt that, oh, I could totally get like this felt so natural. That felt so very natural to me. So one of the things around that hyper independence, and I think it's amazing that women have financial independence now, most women, and we are able to get a career, get an education. You know, there are so many barriers that are less now than what they were a few years ago. But I don't think that means that we have to be alone as well. I don't think that means that now that we have independence when it comes to career and education and our choices around bringing up, having children, bringing up children, I think that does mean though that we've forgotten a little bit like that it's okay to trust and it's okay to be with other people. It's okay to let other people and it's okay to let other people do things for you. And that's it comes around being safe to receive. And I've talked about this in my previous podcast too. And it's about creating that space to not have to do it all on your own, allow someone else to come in and support you, and just sitting in that little bit of discomfort that can be between when the way that you were doing everything on your own and then allowing someone else to come in and support you and to help you. And yeah, I think that's a beautiful place to be. But if we are overly in our masculine, particularly as women, we think, oh, I don't need someone else. I can do it all on my own, then we are going to push that energy away. But it is potentially coming from a place of fear that I don't trust somebody or I don't feel safe to allow my guard down. Yeah, so that is today's episode, a little bit about how attachment wounds can run the show when it comes to adulthood. And a lot of the time, a lot of the things that I talked about here, they're all subconscious. Like we don't actually realize that these woundings or these childhood experiences or these fears that we're carrying are actually what is leading the show. What might be seeming like coming from a place of alignment is actually probably coming from a place of wounding potentially. And that was I wanted to use my own life examples to demonstrate how that could be. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening. So excited to be bringing this podcast to you and hope you're doing amazing. Ka kite.